Hello, I'm BMillzebub, and welcome to a new episode of Criticisms of the Catholic Church. You may all find this quite amusing since I don't believe in any of them, but I'm going to talk about why the Catholic Church is wrong about magic, astrology, horoscopes, and other things like that. Before we get into what the Catholic Church gets wrong, let's start with why I don't believe in magic or any of that. It's because it fails the test every time. Magic has never worked, and horoscopes are just overly general nonsense that can apply to literally anyone. Now that my thoughts on the failure of the topic at hand are out there, let's move on to how the Catholic Church fails to properly address the failure. Catechism 2111, which talks about superstition, says superstition is the deviation of religious feeling and of the practices this feeling imposes. It can affect the worship we offer the true God, example, when one attributes an importance in some way magical to certain practices, otherwise lawful or necessary. To attribute the efficacy of prayers or of sacramental signs to their mere external performance, apart from the interior dispositions they demand, is to fall into superstition. Wow, so little self-awareness in such a small section. First of all, superstition is not the deviation of religious feeling and of practices this feeling imposes. Superstition is a widely held but unjustified belief in supernatural causation leading to certain consequences of an action or event, or a practice based on such a belief. Funny story here, the real definition actually sounds an awful lot like it fits the Catholic Church very well. And attributing the efficacy of prayers or of sacramental signs to their mere external performance, apart from the interior dispositions that they demand, is to fall into superstition. Come on. You're the church that insists people pray the rosary. Do you think people are thinking or meditating about anything other than how the prayers in the rosary go? Or what order they go in? I know I didn't, and I was about as Catholic as you could get. I personally think that a Catholic rubbing rosary beads is no different from someone rubbing a lucky rabbit's foot. Yet another superstitious thing I don't believe in. Moving forward to Catechism 2115 through 2117, which talks about divination and magic, Catechism 2115 says, God can reveal the future to his prophets or to other saints. Still, a sound Christian attitude consists in putting oneself confidently into the hands of providence for whatever concerns the future, and giving up all unhealthy curiosity about it. Improvidence, however, can constitute a lack of responsibility. Alright, like most Christians, Catholics love the free will argument. So tell me, how can God reveal the future to anyone if we have freedom of choice, and by definition, even the omniscient God can't know what our decisions will be until the choice for a decision becomes available? And talking about putting yourself into the hands of providence, hey, come on, just go with the flow and what happens, happens? No one does this. Everyone makes plans for the future, and only a fool would fail to plan even a little forward in life. Then, in the next sentence, to say that you should plan for the future and not entirely rely upon God? I think it's funny that the church believes they can have it both ways. You can't entirely rely upon God, trusting that he'll guide you where you need to go without planning ahead, and then say it's irresponsible to not plan ahead. I would say the Catholic Church is better than that, but it's really not. Especially not when you consider the numerous crimes the church has committed and subsequently covered up to protect its image. Moving on to Catechism 2116. All forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future, consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretation of omens and lots, the phenomena of clairvoyance, and recourse to mediums all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and in the last analysis, other human beings as well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe to God alone. I have to start with this. How exactly will necromancy unveil the future? I mean, I get the past, but I mean, if I'm to include everything it's talking about, which it didn't put in any sort of category, I also have to assume you're presuming that the dead have some knowledge of the future, like when you die, you somehow gain the ability of foresight. But I have to say, citation needed with all this talk of horoscopes, divination, the devil, demons, as though they're real. Don't get me wrong, I look at horoscopes on very rare occasions, but it's only for a laugh. And every time I look at a horoscope, they're so overly general that at least half of the horoscopes fit whatever is happening in my life. So they still fail. But we all live in the same real world, and none of these magics are real. The fact that the Catholic Church still consider these things to be a reality is kind of disturbing. I get that they have some Bronze Age beliefs, chiefly the belief in a deity of some kind, but come on. But I think what I might have the biggest issue with is the last part, where the Catechism explains that these things contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe God alone. I honor and respect my family, sure, and I definitely love them. It helps that I have a good family life, but I certainly don't fear them in any way, and I really hope none of them fear me in any way either. I'm sure there's going to be some Catholic out there who wants to defend their Lord or whatever and say that fear isn't actually fear, but a fear of disappointing their God. I have news for you. I don't fear disappointing my family or other loved ones either. And a fear of disappointing someone or something is still, even tangentially, a fear of that person or thing. So let's round out what the Catechism has to say with Catechism 2117. All practices of magic or sorcery by which one attempts to tame occult powers so as to place them at one's service and have a supernatural power over others, even if this were for the sake of restoring their health, are gravely contrary to the virtue of religion. These practices are even more to be condemned when accompanied by the intention of harming someone, or when they have recourse to the intervention of demons. Wearing charms is also reprehensible. Spiritism often implies divination or magical practices. The Church, for her part, warns the faithful against it. Recourse to so-called traditional cures does not justify either the invocation of evil powers or the exploitation of another's credulity. I am still waiting for an explanation as to why I should give a rat's hairy ass about the virtue of religion. Especially since I'm not seeing a whole hell of a lot of virtue coming out of religion. Religion makes people want to kill themselves, actually attempt to kill themselves, and hate others who are different or don't follow the same religious dogma. I did all of those things I just mentioned, with exception to actually trying to kill myself because of religion, because of the Catholic Church in particular. The remainder of Catechism 2117 just elaborates on how practicing these un-Catholic things are evil, especially when the intent is to cause harm to others or when they invoke demons. Still waiting on a citation that proves demons are even a real thing, by the way. And while I can get behind the idea that doing something to intentionally cause harm that isn't necessary to self-defense or defense of others is wrong, I don't give a shit about how it goes against some hokey, untrue religion. And the Catholic Church talking about taking advantage of the credulity of another is a stunning lack of self-awareness if I've ever heard one. The Catholic Church relies on indoctrinating people before they're really capable of critical thinking by getting them young. They literally take advantage of the credulity of children who tend to believe whatever they're told by grown-ups because grown-ups know better. As children, we're told to look both ways before crossing the street, and we accept it, and later, when we're better able to consider the reasons why, it's explained to us. And recalling my own Sunday school days, we were told that the Catholic Church was right because it's God's chosen church, and because we were so young, we just accepted what we were told. Our teacher obviously knew what they were talking about. They were grown up. The Catholic Church is one of the last groups that should ever criticize another for taking advantage of the credulity of others. I normally bring up what the Bible says if the Catholic Church contradicts it. However, this doctrine is really well in line with what the Bible has to say about magic and all that. So I figure there's no need to repeat everything I said, just in a slightly different way. But I hope you all enjoyed this month's criticisms of the Catholic Church. If you did, please leave the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. If you feel so inclined to help me out, consider giving to my Patreon, where I plan on having monthly patron-only live streams or hangouts. And actually, I just got my first patron on there. They asked to remain anonymous, so anonymous they will stay, but anonymous viewer out there, you know who you are. Thank you very much. But if you don't want to contribute on Patreon, you can always get me something from my Amazon wish list. Every little bit helps, and every little bit is greatly appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, linked below, to keep up with all my comings and goings, and join my Discord for a chance to talk to yours truly. Take it easy, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one.